Martha Hamilton was living a quiet life in Middletown, Ohio. The creaking swing on her front porch and the wooden welcome sign she carved anew each season were the hallmarks of her home. Since losing her husband Robert to lung cancer 3 years ago, Martha had lived alone, but she never felt lonely. Even after retiring from the elementary school where she had worked for many years, her days remained fulfilling. Thanks to Robert's life insurance and her own teacher's pension, Martha enjoyed a comfortable life financially. Once a week, she volunteered at the town library, reading picture books to children, and on Wednesdays, she participated in a knitting circle with neighborhood women. But above all, spending time with her granddaughter Emma was what gave her life meaning. "Grandma, what color do you think this flower is?" 5-year-old Emma, holding a daisy she had picked from Martha's garden, asked with a serious expression. "Well, I think it's white and yellow." "No, that's not it. This flower is the color of clouds and the color of the sun." Martha couldn't help but smile at Emma's words. Her granddaughter's imaginative comments always warmed her heart. Emma was the daughter of Thomas and Rachel, and Martha's only grandchild. Her son Thomas was a successful advisor at an investment firm in Columbus. He lived with his wife Rachel and daughter Emma in a mansion in an upscale neighborhood. 2 luxury cars sat in their garage, and Rachel's Instagram was filled with photos of glamorous parties and family pictures at expensive resorts. However, Martha had recently noticed something off about her son and daughter-in-law. Though they maintained the appearance of affluence, Thomas's forehead was constantly creased with worry, and Rachel seemed to be selling her designer items online more frequently than before. "Mom, work's been busy lately. But don't worry, everything's fine," Thomas had said last Sunday, in front of the homemade apple pie Martha had brought. His voice was tinged with fatigue, and he avoided meeting her eyes. Rachel barely participated in the conversation, focusing on her smartphone instead. Martha observed the couple while holding Emma on her lap. There was tension hanging between them, and their former closeness seemed to have faded. Emma seemed to sense it too, clinging to Martha more than usual. "Grandma, can I come stay with you again?" Emma asked in a small voice as they were leaving. "Of course, Emma. You're always welcome." Martha gently stroked Emma's head. Her special bond with her granddaughter was a treasure in her life. As a teacher who had interacted with countless children, Martha found Emma's sensitivity and keen powers of observation extraordinary. Her granddaughter was a child who perceived things and expressed them honestly. "Mom and Dad are always fighting," Emma had confided when she stayed at Martha's house last month. Martha hadn't pressed for details, simply holding her granddaughter tight. She was a bit disappointed in Thomas and Rachel for showing their discord in front of their child. On Thursday afternoon, Martha's smartphone rang. It was Thomas calling. "Mom, could you pick up Emma from kindergarten tomorrow? Rachel suddenly has work, and I have an important meeting." "Yes, of course. But my car is at the repair shop since yesterday." "That's fine, I'll lend you mine. I'll bring it to your house tonight." Martha was a bit hesitant but happily accepted the opportunity to spend time with Emma. "All right. I'm looking forward to being with Emma." "Thanks, Mom. This really helps me out." Thomas's voice mixed with relief. After hanging up, Martha had a nagging feeling. Her son usually hated lending his car to anyone. Still, she pushed aside that feeling and began preparing dinner, looking forward to her time with Emma tomorrow. That evening, Thomas delivered the car to Martha's house, gave her a quick explanation of how to operate it, and then hurried away. Watching her son's back as he left, Martha felt he might be carrying some significant problem. But tomorrow was a special day with Emma. She put aside such worries and began thinking about making some special treats for her granddaughter. Friday afternoon, Martha picked up Thomas's car keys and checked her watch. Emma's kindergarten ended at 3. She tidied herself up and put on a light pink cardigan, the one Emma liked to call Grandma's color. Looking at Thomas's brand new black Cadillac parked in the garage, Martha hesitated for a moment. It was a luxury car far beyond comparison with her old Honda. Martha carefully sat in the driver's seat and adjusted the position. This was the first time she would drive such a luxurious car. When she started the engine, the car awakened with a quiet growl. "Well then, let's go see Emma," Martha murmured to herself. She slowly backed the car out and onto the residential street. The dashboard was equipped with the latest navigation system, and she entered the address of Emma's Sunnyside Montessori Kindergarten. The car drove smoothly, but Martha felt the steering was a bit heavy. Maybe it's just because I'm not used to a new car, she thought. At an intersection, the light turned red, and Martha stepped on the brake. Something felt off. The pedal felt softer than in her old car, and the response seemed slower. That's strange. Martha frowned, but the car stopped normally. She shrugged off her concerns, thinking it must be a characteristic of luxury cars. She continued driving toward the suburbs. The kindergarten was in a quiet residential area in the northeast part of town. Along the way, Martha occasionally checked the mirrors while thinking about her son. Thomas had been a bright and ambitious child from a young age. He had talked about pursuing a career in finance since college and joined an investment firm right after graduation. He met Rachel at a company party and married her a year later. At their glamorous wedding, Martha and Robert had celebrated their son's happiness. However, recent Thomas seemed like a different person. Phone conversations were brief, and family gatherings had become less frequent. The only thing that hadn't changed was his love for Emma. After parking in the kindergarten lot, Martha tried the brakes once more before turning off the engine. Something was definitely different. The brake pedals sank deeper than normal and responded slowly. "I'll have to tell Thomas when we get back," she noted mentally. Standing at the entrance of Sunnyside Montessori, she could hear the energetic voices of children. In the schoolyard with colorful playground equipment and well-tended flower beds, a few children still remained. Martha Hamilton stood beside Thomas's black Cadillac, waiting for her granddaughter Emma to come running to her. "Grandma." Emma waved happily as she ran toward her, wearing her favorite purple backpack. Her small steps were full of energy, and her golden hair shone in the sunlight. Martha smiled gently and embraced her granddaughter. "Emma, did you have a good day?" "Yes. I drew a picture of space. I drew aliens living on Mars too." Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. Martha took Emma's hand and began walking toward the car. "I came in Daddy's car today," Martha said, and Emma stopped in her tracks when she saw the car. Daddy's car. There was a strange tone in her voice. Martha opened the passenger door and guided Emma to the back seat where her child's seat was installed. Emma slowly got into the car. The moment she sat down, her expression clouded. "Grandma." Emma's voice was trembling and almost inaudible. "What is it, Emma?" "Grandma, this car feels strange." Martha turned around in surprise. Emma's face was pale, and her small hands were tightly gripping the seatbelt. Her blue eyes reflected fear. Seeing her granddaughter's anxious expression, Martha began to feel uneasy herself. "What do you mean? How does it feel strange?" I don't know. Emma shook her head slightly. But I'm scared. Martha sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. The digital display on the dashboard lit up brightly, and the air conditioning began humming quietly. She tried pressing the brake pedal again. Indeed, it sank deeper than normal and felt sluggish in response. The steering wheel also felt heavy when turned, requiring more force. An image from yesterday evening flashed in Martha's mind. When Thomas had delivered the car, he had seemed more nervous than usual, and his explanation had been brief. Then, Emma's words came back to her. Emma, have you ever seen Daddy doing something to the car? Emma nodded slightly. Last night, when I went to get water before bed, Daddy was in the garage. He was doing something under the car. Martha's heart began to race. She slowly pulled out of the kindergarten parking lot. They should normally reach Thomas's house in about 15 minutes. While driving down the quiet residential streets, she paid close attention to how the car handled. Approaching an intersection, the traffic light turned yellow. Martha pressed the brake, but the car decelerated more slowly than she expected. She pressed the brake harder and finally managed to stop the car. Something's wrong, Martha muttered. Grandma, what's the matter? Emma's worried voice came from the back seat. Martha tried to appear calm, but her instincts were warning her. Something was wrong. This car wasn't safe. As the light turned green, Martha carefully crossed the intersection. She decided to pull into the large parking lot of a nearby supermarket. Emma, I need to think about something. We'll stop here for a bit. Martha parked the car in a corner of the lot and turned off the engine. She took a deep breath to organize her thoughts. Thomas and Rachel's recent behavior, the possibility of financial problems, and now the condition of this car, everything was beginning to connect in an ominous way. Grandma, aren't we going home? Emma, Martha said in a gentle voice, I don't think it's safe for us to go home in this car. I think so too, Emma answered immediately. Her eyes showed an understanding that seemed beyond her 5 years. Martha took her smartphone from her handbag and opened a taxi app. Emma, we're going to take a taxi home. Safety comes first. After calling a taxi, she tried to contact Thomas and Rachel, but both calls went to voicemail. Martha left a message. Thomas, we're taking a taxi home. There's something wrong with the car. We'll talk more at home. Martha helped Emma out of the car and locked Thomas's car, keeping only the keys in her pocket. With Emma's backpack and her own handbag, she waited for the taxi near the entrance to the parking lot. Grandma, will Mom and Dad be angry? Emma's voice was small and full of anxiety. Martha placed her hand on her granddaughter's shoulder and gently embraced her. Don't worry. I'll explain everything. 10 minutes later, a yellow taxi arrived. Martha and Emma climbed into the back seat, and she gave Thomas's address. 327 Skyline Estates, please. The taxi driver nodded and pulled away. Emma seemed to relax a bit in Martha's arms. She began singing softly as she looked out the window. It was a song she had learned in kindergarten, a children's song about space and stars. Martha gently stroked Emma's golden hair, thinking about what might happen next. How would Thomas and Rachel react to her actions? Were her suspicions unfounded, or... The car arrived at the entrance to Skyline Estates. The street of luxury homes featured well-maintained lawns and decorative streetlights. The taxi drove slowly and stopped in front of Thomas's house. The 2-story white house, with its spacious front yard and circular driveway, was a typical upper-middle-class residence. "Grandma, Mom and Dad's cars are here," Emma pointed out. Looking in the direction she indicated, Martha could indeed see Thomas and Rachel's cars parked in front of the garage. She paid the driver and got out of the taxi with Emma. As they walked toward the entrance, the door opened, and Thomas and Rachel appeared. They seemed to have been looking outside, expecting something. The moment they saw Martha and Emma getting out of the taxi, their expressions changed completely. The color drained from Thomas's face, and Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Their eyes reflected a fear that Martha had never seen before. "Mom." "Emma." Thomas's voice was shaking. "Why, in a taxi?" "There was a problem with the car," Martha answered calmly. "The brakes felt strange, so for safety's sake." Thomas and Rachel stood speechless. There was a silent exchange between them that Martha felt was filled with fear and panic. "Daddy, Mommy, we're safe," Emma said. "Grandma made us take a taxi." Thomas staggered and grabbed onto the entrance pillar for support. Rachel's face had turned ashen. Their reactions went far beyond mere surprise. There was desperation there, the kind that comes when a plan falls apart. Martha didn't miss this. She quietly squeezed Emma's hand and walked toward the entrance. "Let's go inside. We need to talk," she said. "Emma, would you please play in your room for a while?" "Grandma needs to talk with Mom and Dad," Martha said quietly as soon as they entered the living room. The little girl looked uncertain for a moment but then nodded. "Okay, Grandma. I'm going to build a spaceship with my new Legos." Emma ran up the stairs and disappeared into her room on the second floor. After making sure her footsteps had faded away, Martha turned to face Thomas and Rachel, who stood in the center of the living room. Fear and confusion mingled in their expressions. Thomas had sweat on his forehead, and Rachel's hands were trembling slightly. "Why are you so surprised? Did something happen?" Martha asked calmly. Thomas tried to cover up. "No, just, we were worried when we heard there was a problem with the car. We didn't expect you to come home in a taxi." "I see," Martha answered quietly. The brakes weren't responding properly. And Emma was frightened. "Emma." Rachel's voice cracked. "Why?" In her words, "The car feels strange." "And Thomas, she says she saw you doing something under the car in the garage last night." The color drained further from Thomas's face. "That's..." Emma must have seen wrong. "I was just checking the tire pressure." "In the middle of the night?" Thomas couldn't answer Martha's question. A heavy silence fell over the living room. Only the ticking of the clock on the marble fireplace could be heard. "I'm going to call the police and have them examine the car." Martha's words visibly agitated Thomas. He stepped forward and grabbed his mother's arm. "Stop. There's no need to do that." "Thomas, you're hurting me." Martha pulled her arm free. "Why are you so upset?" Rachel suddenly broke down in tears. She collapsed onto the sofa and covered her face with her hands. "It's over, everything's finished." "Rachel!" Thomas shouted at his wife. "Be quiet." Martha kept her composure as she took her smartphone from her pocket. "I'm calling the police right now." "Mom, please," Thomas's voice was shaking. "Think about the child. Think about Emma." "I am thinking about Emma. That's why we need to know the truth." When Martha dialed 911, Thomas collapsed onto the sofa and held his head in his hands. Rachel continued crying, and occasionally words like, "We needed the money," and "there was no other way," could be heard. The three spent 20 heavy minutes in silence waiting for the police to arrive. Martha worried about Emma's room upstairs, but there was no sign of the little girl coming downstairs. When police sirens were heard, 2 officers appeared at the door. Martha briefly explained the situation and handed over the car keys. "Please investigate the car. There might be something wrong with the brake system." One officer went outside to examine the car, while the other remained in the living room. He took out a notepad and began asking questions. Thomas and Rachel remained silent, and Martha explained what had happened earlier. 15 minutes later, the officer who had been investigating the car returned. His expression was stern and tense. "The brake line has been deliberately damaged. It wasn't completely cut, but engineered to slowly leak fluid. In a situation involving long-distance driving or sudden braking, it would likely fail completely." Martha looked at her son. Thomas's face had turned gray, and he could no longer meet her eyes. "This is a deliberate criminal act," the officer continued. "Mr. Hamilton, we need you and your wife to come to the station to talk in detail." "Please," Rachel suddenly spoke up. "Don't tell Emma anything. She's innocent in all this." Martha was struck by a mixture of intense anger and deep sadness. "Why?" she asked Thomas. "Why would you do such a thing?" After a long silence, Thomas finally spoke. "We were on the verge of bankruptcy, the mortgage, car loans, Rachel's credit card debt, it all piled up. And then my insurance money." Martha anticipated her son's words. "Robert's insurance and my retirement funds." Thomas couldn't raise his face. $3 million. I thought that would solve everything." Rachel continued crying. "It wasn't my fault. Thomas planned it. I was against it." "Don't lie," Thomas shouted. "You were the one who first said, if we had Martha's insurance money." The officer stood between them, trying to calm the situation. "Both of you be quiet. We'll continue this conversation at the station." Martha stood frozen in a state of shock. Until a few hours ago, she had trusted and loved her son. And now, it was revealed that he had tried to take her life. Even more shocking was the fact that if Emma hadn't noticed something wrong with the car, her granddaughter might have been a victim too. "What will happen to Emma?" Martha finally spoke. "We'll contact Child Welfare Services," the officer answered. "She'll probably go to a temporary shelter." "I'll take care of her," Martha said immediately. "As her grandmother, I'll start legal proceedings." Thomas and Rachel were handcuffed and put into the police car. Martha quietly watched from the window as they were taken away. Her heart was torn between disappointment in her son and concern for her granddaughter. As she climbed the stairs to Emma's room, Martha held back tears. She still didn't know how to tell her granddaughter the truth. The only certain thing was that from now on, she was the only one who could protect Emma. Martha knocked on the door and heard Emma's small voice say, "Come in." Entering the room, she found Emma sitting on the floor surrounded by Lego pieces. She was holding a small spaceship and looking at it with a serious expression. "Emma," Martha called gently. "We need to talk." In the solemn atmosphere of the courtroom, the judge entered, and everyone stood up. Martha Hamilton stared at her tightly clasped hands. After 3 months of preliminary hearings, the formal trial had finally begun. Thomas and Rachel Hamilton were charged with attempted murder and child endangerment. Martha couldn't look at her son's face. Every time she saw him, her heart was torn by the pain of betrayal. Defendants, how do you plead? Guilty. Thomas's voice was low and hoarse. He kept his head down, unable to look the judge in the eye. Rachel, on the other hand, had hired a separate lawyer and was advancing a claim that she had been coerced. Not guilty. I was forced by my husband. The prosecution presented evidence of emails and text messages showing that Rachel had been actively involved in the plan. Particularly shocking was a message she had sent to a friend about a new wardrobe for after the accident. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Martha attended every day, watching as the truth was revealed. Emma spent time with a specialized counselor and had begun a new life with her grandmother. Child Welfare Services considered Martha's application and eventually recognized her as Emma's legal guardian. Thomas Hamilton, I sentence you to 20 years in prison. Rachel Hamilton, I sentence you to 15 years in prison. As the judge's gavel sounded, Martha felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It was over. Are you all right? Martha's lawyer gently asked. Yes, now we can move forward. Martha's home became a peaceful place filled with warm sunlight. She and Emma planted vegetables in their small garden and went canoeing on a nearby lake on weekends. Emma gradually regained her smile and began to show artistic talent at school. Martha rebuilt everything to create a stable environment for her. In prison, Thomas deeply regretted his actions. He participated in psychological counseling sessions, confronting his greed and short-sightedness. Rachel, on the other hand, became a problem inmate, sometimes being isolated due to conflicts with other prisoners. On a cloudy autumn day, Martha found a letter in her mailbox. It bore the prison's postmark, and the sender was Thomas Hamilton. She opened the envelope with trembling hands. To Mom. Words cannot express how deeply sorry I am for what I did. I don't intend to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven. I only hope that Emma is happy. She is innocent and fortunate to have such a wonderful grandmother as you. I face my actions every day here. Martha wiped away tears. Her heart was still wounded, but she felt that this letter might be the beginning of healing. That evening, as she had dinner with Emma, Martha gazed at her granddaughter's bright smile. Emma was enthusiastically talking about a picture she had drawn at school. It was a family picture, showing Martha and Emma standing hand in hand. Grandma, this is a picture of our family. It's a beautiful picture, Emma, Martha said quietly. A real family isn't about blood ties, but about the will to protect and love each other. Emma nodded and took Martha's hand. Outside the window, the sun was setting on the horizon. Tomorrow would begin another new day. A new day in the new life of Martha and Emma.